Hey, what's up, everybody out there in YouTube land? It's your buddy Choppadong, and we are going to dive into Week 5 NFL box checkers here, and we're going to trim the fat off the slate and show you the easiest way to find some of the more consistent plays when it comes to NFL DFS. There's a large slate, obviously, a lot to go through. So we're going to dive in and cover defenses, tight ends, and probably wide receivers today, and we're going to try and do this all in about 15 minutes. So let's dive in. But first of all, if you've never found me before, I appreciate it. Thanks for liking and subscribing to the channel. And of course, visit the comments section for DFSArmy.com and the coupon code CHOP, C-H-O-P, which earns you 20% off if you consider becoming a VIP at DFS Army, where we really have one-stop shopping when it comes to daily fantasy sports. All coaches, all tools, all access is granted with one subscription, investment in your own game, whatever you want to call it. We don't nickel and dime you and charge different sports, different prices, different this, different that. Once you're in, you're in. So give that a consideration. Follow our emails. Follow me on Twitter. Do whatever you got to do. Pass the word around. I appreciate it. That's how you pay me back for the free content that I put out. The easiest way to dive in, though, is we're going to look at the NFL research station here inside DFSArmy.com. But first things first, let's look at defenses. These are super, super easy. I don't care about price with defenses. You hear me talk all the time about I'm not afraid to pay up a little bit earlier in the year. We're getting to the point where we might need some value, but we keep finding guys like Wayne Gallman. We keep finding new people. Like if Saquon Barkley practices this week, I heard he was 54 or 4,500 on FanDuel. Hello, free square. If he plays this week, even in a relatively limited capacity, we're gonna have to follow the news out there. But the point is, we can pay up for defense because the spread between say 3,500 and 5,000 in the defense is 1,500 isn't as wide as the bottom even quarterbacks from say 6,000 to 9,000. That's $3,000. Or the bottom receivers from say 5,000 to 8,500. That's $4,000. There's bigger spreads in those other positions. Therefore, diving down to the bottom of the barrel can get you more bang for your buck. Whereas down at the bottom of the barrel, in defense doesn't matter quite as much because it's just not that much more expensive, relatively speaking, to pay up at the top. So I look for ways to pay up. It gets me a little bit different than a lot of people that look to pay down. And quite honestly, the better defenses are the better defenses for a reason. If Travis Kelce was only $1,500 more than, say, Tyler Eifert, you probably take Travis Kelce every single day of the week, right? That's kind of the idea I'm trying to explain to you. And the way that I look for it is I look at implied team totals and I look at the point spread. I don't care about the overall game total. I don't care about, I mean, I want you favored, of course. That's why I look at the point spread. But I don't care if you're home or away with defenses because historically speaking, defenses hit about 10 points or higher in their scoring when they are large favorites and when the team they're facing has a very low implied team total. So the inflection points I'm looking for is being favored, first of all, being favored by more than 6 points. Next, that's like a double check mark. And then the implied team total of the opponent would be under 22 points, then more. I will lean towards it more if it's under 20 points, and I'll lean toward even more if it's under 18 points. So when I look for defenses, I quickly look for who's more than a 6 point spread and who's implied to score under 18 points. And I'll automatically just start right here and say Oakland. Well, Chicago's favored by 6. Washington, Patriots are favored by 15. New York Jets, Philly's favored by 13. And Buffalo, Tennessee's favored by 3. So the stronger factor would go to these 3 teams up here, but Tennessee's definitely in play because we all know Josh Allen can be good for fantasy, but he can also be a turnover machine, much like a Jameis Winston. So Tennessee's not a terrible play. It's just that they're not implied to score very much either. You're not going to get a lot of action going back and forth in that game, most likely. Now, I would prefer a little bit of action. I might look right here towards Chicago in London. This 1 o'clock should change to whatever it is, 9 o'clock or whatever. But the London game, Oakland has not done well in London. There are 2 trips over there. And Chicago has typically been holding their teams to under 17 points or so the last, 9 games or something crazy. So we know we're going to generate a pass rush. We know Oakland's going to be in a position where they're going to have to throw. We know Derek Carr can be turnover prone when he's chucking the ball downfield to receivers. And they're in not a hostile environment, but they're not at home. So I'm going to look for the cheapest defense between New England, Philly, and Chicago. It's probably going to be Chicago. I'm going to start there. If I have a few $100 left over at the end of the build, at the lineup build, then I'll go ahead and toss New England in there if I can get up to them. Then I'll toss Philly in there if I want to. Philly has, low sack numbers right now, low turnover numbers. That might regress, and it might regress this week. It is the Jets. Sam Darnold may or may not play. We need to look into that news as well. Makes a big difference. See how the line might adjust throughout the week. But that's really all you need to look at for defenses. Yeah, you can go taking flyers on any of the others. You want to do the Dallas and Green Bay game. You want to take Denver at home. I think Denver's at home. Nope, Denver's on the road in the Chargers. You want to take the Chargers and bank on Flacco coughing up some balls. He's under 20 points, more than a 6-point favorite for the Chargers. Chargers defense would be in play. They're just not quite as call them like a B plus play. Call Tennessee like an A minus play. Call New England and Philly A plus plays, and Chicago probably an A play. That's about how I would grade them. Anything else is going a little bit further down the scale. But it's not that you can't play Baltimore against Pittsburgh. They might nut the slate. A pick six changes everything. It's just that historically speaking, consistency speaking, larger than 6 points, under 18 points. All right? Easy peasy. Let's jump into the research station. Let's talk tight ends. Because with tight ends, we are looking for the home team. We are looking for favored teams. We are looking for high implied team totals, and then we're looking for targets and red zone targets. So those are the 5 things that I'm looking for. Threshold wise, home gets a check mark, favored gets a check mark, favored by more than say 3 probably gets a check mark, more than 6. Probably instead of more than 3, we should look at more than 6. And then we're going to look for high implied team total. Over, say, 24 or 25 should get a check mark. If you can find one up in the 28, 29, 30 range, that should get another check mark too. I'm not trying to create 10 check marks for you. I'm just trying to show you about where those numbers start tipping scales and getting more and more important. Then I would look at the targets. Over, say, 6 or 7 targets per game, very important. And then targets inside the red zone, very, very important. You look at like a Will Dissly last week. Easy pick. Home, favored, implied to score points, and used in the red zone. He's a little low on the target per game side at 4 or 5, maybe 6 targets per game, but he gets a lot of targets when it counts in the red zone, and of course, scored a touchdown, and then was, of course, used going up against Arizona in a much broader sense. I don't know that I trust Tyler Eifert quite like that this week because Eifert hasn't really been used a lot this week. Andy Dalton, we got questions about whether or not the guy can even play quarterback anymore, but we are going up against Arizona, so I would say I would not make them the chalky pick this week like probably a lot of people will. I would save them more for GPPs. I would look for a little bit more steady Eddie type stuff. So let's go ahead and go to the Vegas section of the tight end. Let's knock down the spread and make it less than 0 so that we get negative numbers. And then let's take the team total and make it over 24. So call it like over 23.5. And now we've got the basics down. If I wanted to scroll, these are the guys. Now did I just kick a couple off the list that we could probably use for GPPs? Yes. I'm talking about somebody that you can use for more of your safer plays, maybe a core type of play that you might want to run in, say, 15-20% of your MME type stuff, or maybe somebody you would kind of want to build around, somebody that you would use in cash, somebody that you would use in 20-man leagues or 100-man leagues or something like that. Save the freaky deekies for the large field GPPs. Of course, they're all in play there because any tight end on any given week has 2 TD upside. We've seen that out of random dudes before. Happen to get lucky, pick the right guy, boom, you get him at lower ownership, and you cruise right on into the deep money of the larger field GPPs, which is fine. I'm just talking about the more conservative, the more steady, consistent type of play. And I'm going to come over here to targets per game, and I'm going to be automatically looking at Ertz, Andrews, and it looks like that's about it in targets per game, which is very, very interesting. That doesn't mean these are the only 2 on my list. It just means if I step down off of them, I'm really going to pay a price. I'm going to have a low, low floor. So this may be a situation where I would include, maybe take the point spread, not the implied team total down a little bit, although the road, if we look at the other number again, back on the overall slate picture we used for defenses, we're going to quickly find this is a lower scoring week with lower implied team totals across the board. So maybe we bump that down to 21 points or something and see if we can't get something included, knowing that we are decreasing our floor. So it may just be a pay up for Ertz or Andrews type day. When I look over here, receiving TDs, don't really worry about those. I'm just going to scroll on over red zone work. I've got a lot of red zone work in these top two. Now, I do have some sneaky red zone work down here with Eifert and Witten, especially down here inside the 10. So maybe Eifert is in play near the end zone. Maybe that spikes at a lower price. Let's go back, double check his price. But it looks like Ertz and Andrews are going to be the guys. With the inside the 20 targets, this here may or may not be a thing. We'll have to watch it. But Andrews is definitely one of the guys. Probably would be my favorite if I had to put a gun to my head and pick one. I'd probably say 6,100 is not too bad for Mark Andrews. Favorite implied to score points. He's obviously Lamar Jackson's favorite target inside the red zone. He gets the targets that count. We've seen that number, and he gets a decent floor of about 6-7 receptions per game. It's probably your safest pick, although tight end is not a safe position. Witten is down in there. Eifert at 4,600. If I'm paying down, I might just go ahead and eat Eifert. Witten would be a GPP pivot because I think the ownership is going to fall on Tyler Eifert. Now, if I go down here and I adjust that team number again, then we'll move on to wide receivers. Take that team total again. Let's drop it just a smidge to say 21 points. Let's actually go a little lower, 20.5, so we get 21 and above. Being it's a little lower scoring week, maybe this pops a couple more guys in there. Greg Olsen, he's at home. Mark Andrews is on the road, though. Remember I said home and favored. I still like him better, but I will note that he's on the road. So there's really no perfect pick this week. Greg Olsen jumped in there. Really, that's about the only name it looks like. So let's scroll over and find. See, that's why Greg Olsen's not implied to score 24 points this week. He is favored. He is at home. And when I scroll over here, look at targets per game. We got 7 targets per game. So Greg Olsen might actually be the new favorite. A little bit of red zone work, three targets and two inside the 10. So I'm gonna make that change. I'm gonna say 5,700. Greg Olsen is my favorite because of the home versus road thing. Home favored, not implied to score as many points, but still got 7 targets, still getting used inside the red zone, and probably without Cam Newton, probably an easier set of routes run, easier, a little bit more confidence in a backup quarterback that's settling into the role. So those are the types of things that I'm going to look at. So Greg Olsen probably number 1, Mark Andrews probably number 2, maybe a Zach Ertz, and then a Tyler Eifert if I'm paying down. Boom, there's your tight ends. If I go to wide receivers, and notice I've turned off these 8 o'clock games. I'm only dealing with the main slate. So if I go to the wide receivers, what I want targets, I want opportunity. Wide receiver is also a volatile position. But if I take this out and sort this down by, say, greater than, say, 6 targets per game, so call it 5.9 or above, so that I get 6 and above. And yeah, you're drawing lines. 5.8 isn't going to make or break me versus a 6.1 target guy. So let's not be too rigid with the rules. I'm actually coming down off of what I'd like to see, which is 7 to 8 targets per game, coming down to include the 6s to give me that little margin for error so that I don't neglect a guy who's 6.9, 6.8 receptions per game, something like that. So down in here, I'm seeing a lot of these targeted guys. I've got a pretty big list going. Receptions, targets, yards. We want red zone work, of course, if we can find it. Now, inside the 10 would be great, but it's not always feasible with wide receivers because it's where we start shifting over to tight ends and running backs, et cetera, et cetera. If you can find a tight end, a wide receiver like a Julian Edelman that gets used inside the 10, all the better, right? Of course, he's got injuries concerns. Emmanuel Sanders would be another. Emmanuel Sanders is pretty much somebody that I'm not afraid to run out as long as his price doesn't get too high. Not afraid to run him out weekly in just about any matchup. Not every matchup, but just about any matchup. 4 targets here for Keenan Allen, 3 for Julio Jones. Being used inside the 10 is a great sign. 3 for Mike Evans. 4 for Godwin. So Edmonds, that's just a good tournament stack every week too. Winston, Evans, Godwin, boom. Run it back with one of the opponents. Hope that they do what they did out in LA another time or two this year. Looking at these red zone targets, of course, the same names are going to pop up. Larry Fitz, 6 inside the 10. That is something to consider big time. So if we scroll over here now, I'm not looking for home. I'm not looking for favored. I don't mind underdogs. That's garbage time. And garbage time's going to affect the wide receiver more than the quarterback. Everybody talks about the quarterback, well, they used to, but the wide receiver is affected more. He gets 1 point per 10 yards of reception. If he catches 4 balls for 40 yards on FanDuel, that's 2 points for the receptions and 4 for the 40 yards. Therefore, it's 6 points. Whereas for the quarterback, you don't get any points for the receptions. You only get points for yardage. And at 40 yards, you don't even get 2 points. You get like a point, 1.6 or something like that. Well, definitely helps 6 points helps the receiver more than the 2 points or whatever helps the quarterback. So don't really worry about the underdog quarterbacks. When we get to quarterbacks, we talk about home favored quarterbacks again. But with wide receivers, we don't talk about being favored because it doesn't necessarily matter. We don't mind some of the underdogs. But when we want an underdog, we want a dramatic underdog. There is a window of mediocrity between 18 points and 27 points in wide receiver world when it comes to implied team totals. If your team is implied to score, between 18 and 27, there's no real indicator there as far as they will consistently meet value at the wide receiver position. However, if we're under 18, they tend to hit value. Why? They're on crappy teams. They're cheaper receivers. They're in line for garbage time work. And that type of implied team total being very, very low is a strong indicator of a cheap receiver that's likely to hit value if we can see that he's also getting the targets and getting the work. Those over 27 points are in shootouts. And shootouts can go crazy. You want receivers in shootouts, especially a back and forth shootout where the receiver's being used all the time and we aren't grinding the clock late with a running back. So let's take into consideration the team total of under 18 if we can find it on a receiver that's getting some work. So when I've got my targets down to 6 or above and I've got my red zone work being looked at, I'm going to cross-check these things as I go through this list. I'm looking for team totals under 18 first. And I'm not seeing any. Oh, there's Tyrell Williams over in London. This doesn't mean he's a great play. It just means that he's in position to hit his value mark at what amounts to 5,900 as his price point. I might want to see him a little cheaper than that, quite honestly. Come down here, 15.5. Jamison Crowder, Robbie Anderson. Ding, ding, ding. We probably have a couple of winners. Terry McLaurin, if he makes the start, ding, ding, ding. We know we have a winner there. Probably not on Trey Quinn, although he's getting targeted. Let's run over and look at Robbie Anderson, Jamison Crowder, and Terry McLaurin. Jamison Crowder, 5,800. Robbie Anderson, 5,500. Terry McLaurin, 6,000. These guys are all pretty safe picks. Terry McLaurin's been getting some red zone work. If I scroll back over here, Terry McLaurin, 6 targets, 4 catches inside the 20, 4 inside the 10, 2 catches inside the 10. So that's big for $6,000, right? But he has to play. Then when I look up here at Jamison Crowder, probably more of a PPR type of guy. He's going to get a lot more targets than a Robbie Anderson. Let's double check that just so we can do our due diligence to a certain degree. Jamison Crowder, 9.3 targets per game is ridiculous. Robbie Anderson still getting 6. You might even come down here and look at a little bit of air yards. You can see 60 for Crowder, 81. A dot of 13 versus 6. Yes, we all know Jamison Crowder's running in the slot, running quick slants and short patterns. And when they're going to be facing a lot of heat from what amounts to the Philadelphia pass rush, well, okay, Philadelphia's not really putting a lot of heat on. So maybe Robbie Anderson's the play here. These are the things that you can go through. There isn't going to be one definitive play or the other, and I'm not even saying these are the best receivers on the list. I'm saying they're in line to hit value. If you're looking for cash games and you're looking for safety, I will take the targets. You might opt for the quick strike or the big play with one of your receivers and then take targets elsewhere. Take a Julian Edelman or take somebody else. And when it comes down to, you've already got like a damn Cole Beasley or something in there, well, my goodness. Now you're not going to sit there and say, well, I want, Jamison Crowder as well. You're going to need some upside in there somewhere, so you're probably going to take a Robbie Anderson over that. You might even take a Robbie Anderson over Cole Beasley on a dollar for dollar $5,500 pivot. These are things that you have to work through. I'm just here to point out kind of where some of these guys wind up. And I know we're getting a little bit late in the video, but let's look really quickly at those over the 27. Come over here to the Vegas situation. We're not going to have very many this week. DeAndre Hopkins, definitely a good play. Julian Edelman, again, if he's healthy. Josh Gordon, maybe for a deep threat. Now, Josh Gordon is more likely to hit value in this game than one under 27 points. That's all this is saying. He's still getting targeted. Is he being used in the red zone? That's a key. Otherwise, he's just going to have to break long ones, which we know he can do. Well, if he can still do that. We know that his track record suggests he can. He's getting targeted some in the red zone. That's not terrible. Not going to be targeted like a Julian Edelman at 6 targets inside the 10, but he's getting targeted some, so that's not terrible. And we look at Josh Gordon's price at 62 versus Edelman's 65. They're about one and the same. So again, here's probably your cash or your league type play. Here's probably your GPP type pivot if you want to stay in the same game. Scroll down the list a little bit more for anyone else over the 27 mark. We've got a 29 here in Nelson Aguilar. That's interesting. 25 for Alden Tate. That's really interesting. We're going to have to dig into some research here and see about where we fall and how many games we played, our snap counts, and things like that. But there's a sneaky GPP name for you, Alden Tate. Who knew? Sort of like the Demir Bird before he got busted up. I'm gonna have to answer the phone here and let you guys go on the video. But the bottom line is, you look for those inflection points. You look for wide receivers getting red zone work, getting a lot of targets, because you want to assemble the best floor you can assemble, and then you want to look for high implied team totals or low implied team totals. If you can find those at cheaper price points, you're going to focus on those spots first. Then you're going to get into the rest of your guys with I want targets like John Brown, Larry Fitzgerald, Mike Thomas, Keenan Allen, etc. that may be not in those shootout type scenarios this week, but we know they're getting usage, we know they're getting work, we know they have high floors, and we know they have elite upside. Those are the types of plays that we can round out our picks with. But when we're looking for the value plays that we might want some consistency from, so that we're not purely punting a position, we can look for those other factors like over 27, under 20, under 18, red zone work, etc., etc., etc. Hopefully this gets you pointed in the right direction. If you like the video, click a like, subscribe, ring the notification bell, do all that fancy stuff. And if you want the coaching and you want the actual explanation that is using this efficient research through coaching notes and through these quick videos and things to tip you off to where your research should be going, or to do a little bit of the research for you to get you started with shorter lists of players to pull from and negate that Sharks edge, where back in the day, Sharks used to have hours and hours and hours a day to do all this research, and you didn't have the access to the information, and you didn't have the time of your day in your day to do it. Now, we have leveraged that time for you by passing it along to you through cheat sheets and through other videos and things like that that are helping you knock your time down. Spend 30 minutes where we spent 3 hours, and you've leveraged that time. That allows you to compete with the Sharks on a busy schedule. That allows you to have more fun in the daily fantasy sports arena, and obviously gives you a little bit better chance to do some winning. So if that stuff appeals to you, consider the VIP membership here at DFSArmy.com. Come inside, unlock the doors, and get it all open to you all at once. Every sport, every coach, every tool we have, all of the strategy, everything that we share, and you've seen the track record on Twitter with all of the winning that we've been doing this year. And NBA is getting ready to kick in. Hockey just kicked off the other night. We had a lot of winning in hockey last night. So no better time than now to join us using coupon code CHOP, CHOP, for that 20% off discount. Love to have you on the inside. Hit me up on the inside when you get in there, and let's do some talking, guys. Take care.